level. You don't basically engage in a price war that goes below your variable cost. In the tech economy, my sense is that you could go much lower than the variable cost. If you've gone down $195, you can go down a little bit more, irrespective of whether you cut into your variable cost. And this is exactly what we've seen with tech firms. So you find that many tech firms will give the product away entirely, and so you're basically at a selling price of zero, where you're still incurring fixed and variable costs. Very interestingly, this is where the size of the organization that is heading at the head of the market will essentially become bigger and bigger and bigger. What some organizations then will do in order to capture a bigger market share is to essentially set negative selling prices. So you might give away the product, and then you might pay the customer to take the product away. This is a strategy that PayPal, for instance, has used very successfully. So in the new digital economy, the extent to which you can lower your selling price is very different from the traditional industrial economy. You can go below the selling price of the competition, you can go below the variable cost, you can even go into negative sort of selling price territory, because the name of the game is simply to maximize your product growth, your volume. So a quite interesting strategy. The second point is that you try and lock in customers. So you have certain features. Microsoft has them. Sort of almost any sort of web-based organization will try and lock in customers. Perhaps Apple does it through its operating system. You may find that certain organizations, Facebook, for instance, has certain features that basically get you glued in and hooked to the product offering. So once you're hooked, it becomes very difficult for you to look at the competition. So switching costs can be artificially high, and over a period of time, that artificiality becomes part of the knee-jerk reaction of the customer. And finally, as most of you are probably aware, we have network effects, certainly in the tech economy, where the greater the number of users of a platform, the greater the benefit to each incumbent user. So it's a bit like a telephone. If you just have 2 telephones in the world, then it's not much use, but the more number of telephones you have, the greater the value offered to each incumbent. Now, a lot of tech firms have sort of said that they need to basically get onto network effects to grow, and that's exactly what they've done. So, of course, you have firms like Monster.com in India, you have Naukri.com, you have firms like Facebook, for instance, you have firms like Google as well, where the product gets better as you have more and more clients. So these are the 3 strategies that have been used to grow volume before or perhaps at the same time as you attain profits. AOL 20 years ago found out very, very rapidly that there's a huge amount to be had from network effects. So it sort of a membership grew very, very, very quickly, but the length of time it took to add a million clients became lower and lower and lower. So there was a sense in which each incumbent benefited more as the size of the organization grew in terms of the number of users. What's then very, very different now, I think, is that we used to think of a winning product as one where you basically have a lot of sales and each of the product generates a profit. Today, you might think that actually you just need a big volume. Each individual product sale, if you were to think of it that way, or at least the product being provided to the platform user doesn't actually have to make a profit. So you would find that a product A would now be seen to be really quite successful. Now, what has changed for financial management? I would sort of suggest quite a lot. First of all, a get big fast strategy is absolutely crucial for tech firms. So you have sort of the very big organizations, and then you have the sort of long tail of small organizations. The second point is that if you look at the income statement of a tech firm, very often the revenues are generated through, for instance, advertising, but the costs are generated through platform users. So the costs don't necessarily link into revenues, and that means that you need to...
I hope to know about it in some way. So, Karandir, may I start?
Yes, yes, please start. I have muted myself so that there is no disturbance and there's no other noise. But please, we are all ears, and please go ahead.
Thank you. So I understand the audio link is functioning. Well, again, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Today's brief talk will be on Estonian e-residency, and there will be also very brief intellectual derive, if you like, on whether it is or might be also a new frontier of digital society. Some facts about Estonia first, to give you a geo-referenced view of where the country is located. It's in Europe, has a population of about 1.24 million. The land area is substantial. The currency is the euro. It's, of course, members of every relevant major international organization. And last but not least, certainly you can see that the contribution of IT to the real GDP sector, it's about 7%. And these are the most recent figures, courtesy of the team, the government team that is involved in e-residency. So I'm borrowing this and the next few slides from them. Now, what are really Estonia's higher ratings when we are actually talking about not as widely known initiative and not as widely known pearl in the European dimension of e-government. But beyond that, we see, for instance, that Estonia ranks first in a variety of areas for tax competitiveness, according to the ACD, for entrepreneurship, according to the World Economic Forums, for the digital development in 2016, according to Berkeley's, and according to the European Commission, also for the digital economy, society, and public services. Not to mention mobile network, and then also additional pretty high ranks in additional dimensions, from freedom to economic freedom to ease of doing business, according to the World Bank. Next, briefly, Estonia's timeline in government IT initiatives, e-government disease. It starts up about 18 years ago in 2000 with a tax board, but in particular, it's a very standard app these days, which is the mobile parking. Essentially, in Estonia, people do not pay for parking in the traditional sense. They actually send an SMS and their plate numbers, and there is a system that records the area and then essentially detracts the payment for the parking from the phone bill. And that was already in 2000. You can see the progress until 2005, which went all the way to one of the first e-voting systems in Europe. Next, from 2007, the mobile ID was introduced, and this also is an important part of not just the residency, but of the way in which the Estonian citizens interact with the government. Finally, in 2014, we see the birth of e-residency. And the most recent initiative, which isn't mentioned here, of course, is also in relation to a recent tax treaty that was signed by the major European economies during Estonia's term of the European presidency, which ended in December 2017. About today's talk, more in detail, we are going to see how your residency provides the tools needed to conduct business globally and entirely online from anywhere in the world and with minimal cost, how it could be of special relevance for seeking a tax-efficient European base. And on the intellectual side, the new ideas that this initiative introduces, from the concept of digital citizenship to the redefinition of national identity and the nation state. And finally, how e-residency can provide ideas to countries that are implementing similar initiatives. So for the first...
We already have a question which says, does e-residency allow EU tax residency and visa-free travel? That is from Mahesh Balakrishnan. So
right.
maybe you would like to take it on later as you go through the presentation. Maybe it's too early to answer that, and it's already there.
Yeah, maybe for time considerations, we might deepen up on questions later on. But
sure,
yes, it's a very question. The answer is that e-residency, it's not equivalent to, the brief answer this is not equivalent to citizenship in the traditional sense, and does not give an actual travel ID document. But a different type of ID for operating an e-resident company or entrepreneur profile. But yes, the brief answer is that, and we can discuss more in detail about this, of course, with during the Q&A. If that's okay, can I proceed?
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Right, thank you. So now, for the first part of the talk, how can e-residency provide the tools needed to conduct business globally? Well, essentially, Estonia's e-residency is the first initiative of this type in the world, has already spanned 154 countries. There are about 35,000 e-residents. This is the latest figure we have, with more than 3,000 companies being established and more than 5,000 being owned by e-residents. But I guess a very valid question at this stage is, why opening a company in Estonia? Beside the success that the initiative has already achieved, well, there are a number of reasons. Now, of course, the first would be the possibility to join one of the most advanced digital societies. And this is because there hasn't yet been a matching initiative, not just in Europe, but in the rest of the world, that has been able to develop as fast and as digitally as e-residency and the wider Estonian e-government programs as well in the rest of Europe. Of course, the benefits of the initiative are also grounded on the fact that it is based in the Eurozone, so this offers clear advantages. There are obviously low start on Facebook when we operate with our digital selves anyway. The area has plenty of areas for and opportunities for future research and study as well. Now, if we were to look at the residency now from how it can provide ideas to countries that are aiming to implement similar initiatives, I would like to start by saying that it's preconditions that actually exist today in Estonia are very difficult to imitate. This doesn't exclude the possibilities that in the future we might see similar initiatives, but currently it's very hard that such conditions can be matched. To start with, for instance, what do we see in most businesses or in most governments actually today around the planet is the overabundance of papers that are part of the analog era, that nevertheless has its legacy in the digital era as well. Now, Estonia has been very forward in wholly embracing the digital dimension. And a number of companies have thrived literally just by their digital provisions and their digital products. from TransferWise that I guess at least some of you might know, to Funderbeam. These companies have flourished also thanks to Estonia's unique conditions, also thanks to the programs that constitute the backbone of what allows e-residency to take place. And such companies have also started in Estonia and then grew globally and rapidly. TransferWise, for instance, was also object of substantial investments from Virgin's guru and owner, and Funderbeam, which so far remain more of a local Estonian initiative, aims to facilitate Estonia's startup and entrepreneurial capacity via recreating part of the mechanisms that are used for crowdfunding initiatives. But there are plenty of more companies that have developed from this backbone and that are growing from Estonia internationally. One of the most famous, although not always recognized to be from Estonia, it's actually Skype. Now, we should also not underscore the relevance of Estonian women-led companies in what is greatly contributing to Estonia's vibrant startup scene. And some of such companies, indeed, one of these is Funderbeam by Kaidi. Then there is Testlio, which tests mobile app.
Yeah, Diego is also a friend of mine, so happy to sort those out along with Diego's help. I now have just one thing left, which is a little bit of a thank you, which I'll just try to. Let me just, I'm not trying to just, so I'll just go back. I assume everybody can now see my screen.